the NHRA, the world's largest motorsport sanctioning body, showcasing speeds in excess of 290 miles an hour and traveling a quarter mile in less than 5 seconds. Championship drag racing from the NHRA. The racers that follow the NHRA Winston Championship Drag Racing Trail began their 19-race, $18 million season in February in Pomona, California. In the ensuing 9 months, they stop at racetracks from California to New Jersey, Texas to Canada. The most recent stop was at the all-new Heartland Park, Topeka for the inaugural Heartland Nationals. In the Top Fuel final, Dick Lahaye raced Shirley Muldowney, both racers running 5.07 seconds, Lahaye winning by the narrowest of margins. His victory brought him even closer to the points leader Gary Ormsby and the second-place car Joe Amato. In funny car racing, Mark Oswald, after 4 runner-up finishes, wheeled the Ford Probe to his first victory of the season. Bruce Larson, while losing in the second round of racing, maintained his big lead over the defending and 4-time champion Kenny Bernstein. It was a Dodge versus Chevy battle in the final of Pro Stock Eliminator, with Darrell Alderman putting his Dodge Daytona in the winner's circle for the second time this season, defeating Joe Lapone's Beretta with a 7.45 second at 184-mile-an-hour run. Bob Glidden continued to keep a wide margin over Bruce Allen in the points chase, with both cars losing early in competition at Topeka. Now the racing scene shifts to Texas as the 17th event of the national event season returns to the Texas Motorplex for the 4th annual Chief Auto Parts Nationals. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave McClellan, and welcome to the first of the true super tracks across the United States, the Texas Motorplex near Ennis. As was expected, records have fallen in qualifying. Ed McCulloch ran the quickest funny car time ever at 5.13 seconds and ended qualifying with a time of 5:18 for the new national record.
We've been experimenting. We're sort of out of the points chase as far as the championship, so we decided, Bernie decided that we need to get ready for next year, so we've been doing some testing here, and so far it's working.
But then in the first round of eliminations earlier today, McCulloch had a tire-smoking, out-of-control race with John Force, with Force coasting to victory. To add injury to insult, McCulloch's engine was severely damaged when he lost traction. In Pro Stock Racing, 4-time 1989 event winner Bruce Allen's first round victory over Gary Brown is one that he will remember forever. The run itself was another picture-perfect win by the Rare and Morrison Beretta. But as Allen crossed the finish line and popped the chute, the car swerved to the left and slammed into the guardrail, narrowly missing Gary Brown. In replay, it does not appear that the parachute was the culprit. More like a gust of wind caught the chute and pulled it to the right, causing the rear end to slide out. That put Allen out of control, and once he lost it, it was inevitable he would go into the guardrail. The remarkable thing is that neither Allen or Brown got caught in each other's parachute lines, which would have resulted in much more damage to both cars. After the initial impact with the guardrail, Allen's Beretta then crossed back over the track and ended up against the right-hand guardrail. After the car came to a stop, Allen reached up and shut off the electrical equipment. Allen himself was unhurt, but regrettably the same could not be said for the Beretta. It sustained major chassis damage. Obviously, Bruce Allen's day was over, giving a bye run in round 2 to Bob Glidden. Now let's turn our attention to Gary Ormsby's pit area, where Steve Evans has the story on Top Fuel.
Well, David, with Funny Car and Pro Stock virtually wrapped up, Bob Glidden and Bruce Larson, as you alluded to, Top Fuel is a story, a 3-way points war. Dick Lahaye, Joe Amato, and Gary Ormsby. Now, just as Lahaye and Amato maybe thought they had the Californian Ormsby backed into a corner, 2 crash cars, a new car that wasn't performing, Ormsby strikes back. Here in qualifying, 4.91 seconds, the quickest elapsed time in history. More importantly, he backed it up round 1 here against Frank Bradley with a 4.92, the 200 points he so desperately needed. some of Gary's closest rivals thought maybe this brand new car that debuted a week ago in Topeka might have been a mistake because it's built for the 1990 rules that require lower rear end ratios. They're not saying that after this morning.
Well, we were pretty fortunate, Steve, to set the record. We went up there, even though things seemed to have changed this morning. We had to gamble and go for that record. We needed those points this morning.
Now, what's the strategy? You've got a couple of races to go after this one.
After this one, we'll just try to be consistent. Consistency will do it, and if you can maintain and stay a couple of 200 or 300 points ahead of everybody going into the final, I think that'd make the difference.
Did you hear Joe Amato's line from Topeka? All he had to do, what he said?
Well, I think someone told me he had to just get 200 points a race, but well, we've got other ideas about that.
Okay, Gary Ormsby, they're getting ready for round 2 of Top Fuel. Right now, let's go to round 2 of Funny Car.
Steve, the cars are running and the burnout procedure has started. This is Jim White driving Roland Leong's Hawaiian Punch Dodge Daytona. He is racing the Skull Bandit Pontiac of Don Prudhomme. Prudhomme's had quite a shock this weekend. His quickest time ever for a funny car has been taken away by Ed McCulloch's brilliant 5:13. McCulloch has been unable to back up that time within 1% for the record, but he does hold the new national mark at a 5:18. Meantime, Prudhomme in qualifying ended up in the number 2 spot with a 5:15. He has an opportunity to back that up for the record and run as quick as a 5:10 to use for the backup. He also would gain the 200 bonus points by establishing a new national record, just like Gary Ormsby picked up in Top Fuel. In his first round race, Prudhomme defeated Tom Hoover, while Jim White, running the best of his career, qualified number 6 with a fine 5:27 and beat Mark Severs in round 1. A final check of the cars by the crews as both drivers begin to concentrate on getting a good start, a good leave off the line. The few hundredths of a second advantage a driver can get off the starting line can multiply itself into many car lengths at the finish line just 1,320 feet away. White in the near lane, Prudhomme in the far lane. Prudhomme by 2.5 to 3 car lengths wins it with a 5.33 second elapsed time. His speed 269 miles an hour. Obviously Prudhomme not going for the record, trying instead to win this race. The 1989 NHRA Chief Auto Parts Nationals is being brought to you by Firestone. Watch us, we're on the move. And by Fram Bendix Autolite. All quality products of Allied Automotive. And by Budweiser. For all you do, this Bud's for you. More funny car action coming up next. Nationals, you're looking at just a small part of the biggest crowd ever to attend a race here at the Texas Motorplex. Now let's go to the far end of the track. Steve Evans with Don Prudhomme.
Well, after winning an ice skating contest in round number 1, I think, Don Prudhomme, you backed it down where you figured it'd hook.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't even know what it ran. What it run?
5:33.
Yeah.
Used to be a good number about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's not much, but we had to really back it down. So, but we're going to have a tough race tomorrow, so we'll step on it. We've got to, we went on the other side, and we're going to come back and see what we can do with it.
You want to lead funny cars the quickest and fastest ever?
Well, it'd be nice, that was my goal coming in here. It's getting a little farther and farther away. The track's getting a little funny out there, but we're going to try.
He always does.
Don Prudhomme, one of the most intense competitors ever in funny car, moving to Top Fuel Eliminator in 1990. Here is the man that is leading the Winston Points chase for funny cars. That's Bruce Larson, driving the Century Tack and Gauges Oldsmobile. And if Prudhomme thought he was in an ice skating contest in round 1, well, John Force must have felt he was in the Olympics when he raced Ed McCulloch. As you saw earlier, both cars lost traction, but Force was able to regroup and coast across the line to earn the right to race Bruce Larson. Larson qualified 5th with a 5:22, beat Richard Hartman in round 1. Force's qualifying time, very competitive at a 5.30, but at this very tough race, that was only good for the number 9 spot. Thus, he raced the number 1 qualifier, McCulloch, around earlier. Here's a master of all that he surveys. This is Buster Couch, the chief starter for the National Hot Rod Association, checking on both cars, making sure they're right before he throws the switch that turns on the green light, sending these two 4,000 horsepower cars down the track. And John downforce goes up in smoke again, but this time his competitor does not lose traction. Bruce Larson, in fact, has a great run, a 5:24 at 278 miles an hour, moving him even closer to his dream of the Winston Crown for Funny Car Eliminator. The next two cars coming to life. The fiberglass body for Tony McCollum coming down over that tubular chassis. McCollum sitting behind the racing engine, as does his competitor Kenny Bernstein. They'll burn out together. The burnout's designed to heat those 17-inch wide tires to get them to optimum operating temperatures. They only work well when they're hot, and the only way you get them hot is to burn the rubber. Here is Kenny Bernstein, the reigning and four-time series champion, and the driver that Steve's about to talk to is close to taking his title away. Steve?
The man is absolutely an elapsed time machine. A 5:24. That's a beautiful shot.
That's great. That was a little different run. The car was a little loose leaving. We kind of thought the track might get a little loose on the starting line, and Maynard did a great job on the clutch.
This is a racetrack where a driver has to drive.
Yeah, that one was a driver.
You know, and I'm told by the would-be accountants in the tower that if Kenny Bernstein should be defeated this round, you are indeed the Winston champion for the first time in your career.
I'll believe it when I see it. Thanks.
Okay, well, let's watch. It's going on right now.
Steve, Bruce Larson giving proper tribute and credit to his crew chief, Maynard Yanks. Tony McCollum has beat Kenny Bernstein before, and Larson is remembering that. It was in the first round of racing at the California Nationals that Tony McCollum put away Bernstein. Here he qualified 8th and beat Larry Bostic in round 1, while Bernstein qualified with a 5:21, the quickest run of his career, and beat Art Hendy in his first round of competition. The body coming up on Tony McCollum's car. That is not a normal move for this crew. The Bernstein crew, headed by Dale Armstrong, they're looking over, checking out what's going on. Underneath the body, crew chief Wayne Dupuy working on Tony McCollum's car, ever vigilant. Buster Couch says, you can't race it this time. Shut the engine off. It will be a single for Kenny Bernstein. Meanwhile, down at the far end of the track, Bruce Larson knows it will not be this round that he clinches the series title. McCollum is out. Bernstein on a single. And a good run. Keeping pace not only with round 1, but also in performance. Bernstein, 5.24 seconds. His speed, 277 miles an hour. Steve?
Kenny Bernstein also a 5:24. It just keeps getting more interesting.
Hey, we've still got a race going.
Indeed we do.
There may be some pressure on Bruce Larson, but it is lessening with every round. Bernstein only has a mathematical chance of catching him for his 5th title. Back at the starting line, our next two cars getting ready for their burnout procedure. This is Al Hoffman out of Umatilla, Florida. His competition is Mark Oswald, driving the Candies and Hughes Motorcraft Ford Probe out of Houma, Louisiana. Al Hoffman ran a 5:43, his personal best in round 1 to beat Scott Coletta. Mark Oswald raced against Mike Dunn, earned lane choice here in round 2 with a 5:24 in putting away Dunn, who in qualifying at the wheel of the Joe Pisano Oldsmobile had an incredible experience. When Dunn hit the throttle, a mechanical problem inside the engine caused the supercharger to explode, sending a fireball skyward and raising the body off the chassis. The supercharger literally disintegrated, forcing the crew into an almost all-night effort to get the car ready for its first round race, which Mike lost against Mark Oswald. The blower drive service Thunderbird of Al Hoffman in the near lane of the track. The Ford Probe of Mark Oswald inching its way into those beams of infrared light across the starting line. They're set in a red light for Hoffman. He left the starting line too soon. Automatically, Oswald is the winner. His elapsed time, another good one, 5.29 seconds. His speed over 273 miles an hour. That sets up the pairing for the semifinal round of competition here at the Chief Nationals. It will be Mark Oswald against Bruce Larson, with Larson having the choice of lanes. The other pair finds Don Prudhomme and Kenny Bernstein. Bernstein choosing the lane in the semifinals. Back in the pit area, Shirley Muldowney rolling towards the staging lane. She has to race Gary Ormsby in round 2 of Top Fuel Eliminator. Coming up at the Chief Auto Parts National. Auto Parts Nationals at the Texas Motorplex. We're set for round number 2, racing in Top Fuel Eliminator. You're looking down into the cockpit of Joe Amato, strapped into that roll cage of his nearly 300-mile-an-hour Top Fuel dragster. His competition already rolling. Getting set to do the burnout is Eddie Hill. This race is a study in contrast between race cars. Joe Amato's car, 300-inch wheelbase, absolutely the state-of-the-art. Eddie Hill's car, 256 inches long, built back in 1983. Hill wants to make it the quickest and fastest old Top Fuel dragster in the sport. The quickest he's run is 5 seconds flat, set in qualifying here at the Chief National. Backing into his own tracks, that's another benefit of the burnout. In addition to getting the tires hot, it lays down a layer of rubber atop the concrete. Hill at the wheel of the Super Shop Special beat Gordy Bonin in round number 1, while Joe Amato wheeled the TRW car to victory over Gene Snow, the first driver ever in the Fords. Amato qualified with a 495. In second behind Gary Ormsby. He is trying to close the gap, but Ormsby, by virtue of thus far quick elapsed time of the meet, is picking up an additional 50 points. As low qualifier, he got an additional 32 bonus points. So if that should stick, he's gained 282 points just in bonus payout at this race. Hill goes up in smoke. A little loss of traction for Amato, but he reacts quickly. 5.07 seconds. His speed, 287 miles an hour. And that momentary loss of traction cost Joe Amato a good ET. Here, as we look again, you can see in the near lane, Hill losing traction almost as quickly as the car rolls off the starting line. But in the far lane of the track, as Amato briefly lost traction, he had to lift, and that possibly cost him a 4-second time. Here is another of the older cars in competition. This is the Gunite Express car of Frank Cook. It is racing another 300-inch wheelbase car in the far lane, the Coors Extra Gold Special of Darrell Gwen. Cook's car's been around a while. Gary Ormsby won the 1984 Winter Nationals at the wheel of this car. Right now, let's go to the far end of the track and Steve Evans.
Joe Amato, a nice 507. You're still in the running, but it sounded to my ear anyway to be a little loose in the middle of the racetrack.
Steve, it's shook hard and I pedaled it once. You know, it felt like the tires were coming loose or ready to, and you know, just you don't know what the other guy's doing, so I didn't see him there, so I just kind of pedal it and try to stay with it and try and get the round. You know, it's very important here with the points with Ormsby.
Indeed it is. This can be a very tricky racetrack, especially when the sun comes out for some reason.
Yeah, I pedaled it the first round. You know, it was so close it starts shaking. You know, when the sun gets on these tracks, they get oily and the rubber gets hot and it balls up and you know, you go from a 4-second racetrack to a smoking tire racetrack.
Nice driving.
Thank you.
You know, Darrell Gwen's got to be thinking about it. So does the team manager, Jerry. That's his dad coming over for the traditional handshake. Darrell, winner of the U.S. Nationals this year, qualified well with a 496, had a 498 in round 1 to beat Jim Head. Meantime, Frank Cook, after a fine 501 qualifying effort for the number 8 spot, beat Robert Reel in a tire-smoking effort in round 1. Gwen, with the lane choice by virtue of the quicker elapsed time in that first round, has selected the far lane of the track. No loss of traction problems for Gwen. Crew Chief Ken Beanie showing the elation of the second 4-second elapsed time today. 4.99. His speed over 285 miles an hour. Cook was close at a 506, 286. Meantime, back in the funny car pit area, work going on normal maintenance on the engine in Kenny Bernstein's funny car. While he may be all but out of competition for the Winston Crown, there's a great race for second between Bernstein and his competitor in the semifinals, Don Prudhomme. Auto Parts Nationals. I'm Dave McClelland along with Steve Evans, and 2 of the greatest Top Fuel racers ever are squaring off here in round number 2. In the far lane of the racetrack, the quickest car in the history of the sport, that's Gary Ormsby in the Castrol GTX Special. In the near lane, the bright pink Performance Automotive Wholesale car of Shirley Muldowney. This is quite a weekend for Shirley. She is the first person to run 4-second elapsed times at 3 consecutive races. She did it first at the Keystone Nationals in Maple Grove, then in Topeka, and now here when she qualified with a 4:98. This huge crowd intently watching the two cars completing their burnout procedures. Really, all that's left now for the crew is to check things over. That's Ron Tobler, the husband and crew chief for Shirley Muldowney. Both Ron and Shirley know they've got quite a battle on their hands. It was in the first round that Muldowney beat Rudy Topke, but with a very slow time as she smoked the tires. You saw Gary Ormsby run the 492 in round 1 to beat Bradley. That gave him the lane choice, but on that run, he went 294.88 miles an hour, a new national record, the fastest speed ever in Top Fuel racing. That record by Ormsby took away the mark set earlier in qualifying by Mike Brotherton, and Shirley goes up in smoke. Ormsby through the quarter mile, another good time, 4.99 seconds. Again, over 290, 291.63 miles an hour. Gary Ormsby continues to set the pace. And here is Mike Brotherton. As I told you, he had held the speed record momentarily during qualifying. His time at the wheel of the Williams Telecommunications Group Speed of Light dragster, 294.88 miles an hour, identical to the time run by Ormsby. But by virtue of the quicker elapsed time on the run by Ormsby, he's got the speed record. Speaking of Gary, Steve's with him.
Gary Ormsby and his crew chief Lee Beard, I feel being very careful to not overpower this racetrack, a 499.
Yeah, I felt it break loose a little bit out there, Steve. Scared me too, yeah.
The speed is still up though, 291.
Yeah, I don't think that'll affect our tune-up will affect the speed like it will the ET.
You know what that sets up, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
What's that?
I think it's myself and a motto, isn't it?
You bet it is. You have lane choice.
Good. I think it might be an advantage here.
I think you'll find him in the far lane.
Steve, we have found every quicker car selecting the far lane of the racetrack, as has Dick Lahaye at the wheel of the Miller High Life Special. The opportunity to select the lane may be crucial for Lahaye's efforts to win the series title. He is currently in third, trying to close on both Ormsby and Amato. Lahaye qualified second with a 494 and had an identical time in round 1 to beat Laurie Johns. Mike Brotherton qualified sixth at a 499, his first ever 4-second time, and in his first round race was matched against Dennis Forcell in the near lane. Forcell left too soon. He redlighted, and when Mike Brotherton stepped on the throttle, he had major problems. Trailing a huge ball of fire, Brotherton completed the run, and Steve was there.
Michael, I have not seen a Roman candle like that in a long, long time. I think when you see the video, you too will be amazed that it made it to the finish line.
Yeah, it felt like it was smoking the tires, so I don't know what happened. I didn't realize it had a problem. We'll do our best to fix it. I hope we can make it.
It took a lot of work between rounds, but Mike Brotherton is here with a brand new engine in the frame rails. The crew doing an outstanding job getting the car ready to challenge Dick Lahaye. The staging just about complete. Lahaye is set. A good start. And problems for Lahaye. He crossed over the center line. Brotherton won the race with a 5.02 seconds. Lahaye doing a great driving job to keep his car out of Brotherton's lane. Problems, obviously, as you see the car listing over to the left and a flat left rear tire. As we watch again, Lahaye neared the finish line. And then something apparently cut the tire, causing it to lose air. Lahaye drifted over the center line, hit the timing lights, but stayed away from Mike Brotherton, who won the race and advanced into the semifinal round. This could be the knockout blow to Lahaye's hopes for a Winston title. Both Ormsby and Amato still in competition. Let's go down to Steve Evans.
You never know in the straight line sport of drag racing how good a driver is until things go wrong. And for Dick Lahaye, they went very, very wrong. As you can see, the left rear tire off of the wheel. Lahaye extremely upset. And I think right now, more than the scary ride, knowing Lahaye losing the drag race probably has him more upset than anything else. You okay, Richard?
Yeah, I'm fine.
What a ride, Paul.
Well, I'm more concerned about losing the race than anything else.
That's what I just said.
It's, we're out here fighting for this world championship, you know, and stuff like this, you expect it.
Yeah.
And it just...
What do you think happened?
I'd either pick something up on the track or... Fortunately, I had my hand on the parachute. I mean, I always drive with one hand.
Yep.
And the minute something strange happens, I just pull the parachute out.
The parachute is your best friend in those situations.
I'm telling you, that and the Lord.
He's just fine.
A scary moment for Dick Lahaye, but fortunately, everything turned out okay. The crushing blow to Lahaye was the big break for Mike Brotherton. He will be making his first ever semifinal round appearance in NHRA competition when he challenges Gwen having the choice of lanes. The other pair finds that race between the points leader and the second place car, Gary Ormsby against Joe Amato, and Ormsby choosing the lane. Out on the racetrack at the moment, the NHRA crew is replacing the timing lights that were struck as Lahaye's car crossed over the center line. We'll be back to racing in just a moment with the semifinal round of Pro Stock Eliminator. Mark Oswald and his crew working on the Ford Probe, getting it ready for the semifinals of Funny Car, where he will race Bruce Larson. Oswald, the most recent winner on the NHRA trail, picking up the title at Heartland Park, Topeka. It's time now for the semifinals of Pro Stock Eliminator. Looking through the car of Don Beverly, you see Larry Morgan starting into his burnout procedure with the Castrol Oldsmobile. Morgan had a big weekend over Labor Day when he won the U.S. Nationals title in Indy. The hand of Don Beverly reaching for the shifting lever as he proceeds into his burnout with the Crown Petroleum Oldsmobile. Beverly qualified very well here at Texas with the number 4 spot at a 7:30. He beat Mark Powick in round number 1. In round number 2 competition, Chuck Ekmalian brought his Pontiac to the starting line after qualifying 16th and beating Kenny Delco in his first round race. In that round 2 confrontation, it was a red light for Ekmalian in the near lane. Beverly went on to take the win with a 7:67. He slowed at the finish line, indicating some possible problems. That win by Beverly set up the race with this man, Larry Morgan, in the semifinals, who qualified second at a 7:29, beat Butch Leal in round 1. In the second round, he raced the Chevrolet of Reed Wisnan, who had qualified 6th at a 7:31 and beat Darrell Alderman, who broke in his first round race. Morgan was in the far lane and a good lead going into the finish line over Wisnan and advanced into the semifinals with a 7.33 second elapsed time. That earned him the lane choice over Beverly. And as every quicker car has done, Larry Morgan has selected the far lane of the racetrack. Traction conditions all important to these cars, just as it is in Top Fuel and Funny Car. 500 cubic inches, 2 4-barrel carburetors, racing gasoline, minimum weight, 2,350 pounds. Tremendous competition between the makes of cars in these factory hot rod Pro Stocks. What a race for Larry Morgan. He goes into the finals. His elapsed time, 7.30 seconds. His speed, a whopping 187 miles an hour. As we look again in replay, a very slight advantage was gained by Don Beverly at the starting line, but that went for naught as Larry Morgan laid down the quickest elapsed time of eliminations. That 7.30 seconds win put him into the final round. As they approach the finish line, by more than a car length, Larry Morgan, the victor.
Oh, boy, that was a nice one, Larry. 7:30.
It felt like a 30. It was a good, smooth run, and I really felt like it'd run fast. Really good and smooth.
He had just about 100th off you.
Well, I figured that he would probably do real good because he really wants to beat me. So I figured that he would probably do real well on the tree, but I figured I could run well, too.
When you win the U.S. Nationals, everybody wants to beat you.
That is true.
That's the penalty you pay.
That's true. Thank you.
Larry Morgan, headed for the finals.
And Steve, that U.S. Nationals victory was the first ever Pro Stock Championship won by Larry Morgan. Meanwhile, back on the starting line, our other pair of semifinalists following the same procedure as their Top Fuel and Funny Car counterparts, the burnout heating up those tires. Here is the Motorcraft Ford of Bob Glidden, and you're riding along in his race against Warren Johnson. What a classic struggle this is. Ford against Oldsmobile. The AC Delco car of Johnson, the #1 qualifier at this event. He's got a time of 7.27 seconds. He beat Don Kuntz in his first round race. In round number 2 of racing, Johnson was matched against Joe Lapone, who had qualified 5th at a 7:31 and beat the Buick of Buddy Ingersoll. Lapone was in the near lane in the easy wider special. In the far lane, the quicker car, Warren Johnson. Lapone was too quick off the starting line. A red light disqualification for him gave the win to Johnson. A time of 7.31 seconds moved him into the semifinals, where he will race Bob Glidden. Glidden had qualified here in the Ford in the number 3 spot at 7.29 seconds and beat Nick Nicolas in round number 1. His second round opponent was to have been Bruce Allen. But Allen, of course, as we saw earlier, is out of competition. In his first round race from his number 7 qualifying spot, he was matched against Gary Brown. He lost control, the car almost overturning. Coming across right in front of Brown, he slammed into the guardrail, causing heavy chassis damage to the Levi Garrett Beretta. Brown, meantime, had his hands full, just keeping his car off the guardrail. Allen was unhurt in this incident, but was unable to return for round number 2, where Bob Glidden ran a 7:35 in the Ford Probe. That gives the lane choice to Warren Johnson. He has moved his Oldsmobile into the far lane of the racetrack. A close race, and by half a car length, Warren Johnson goes into the final round. The number 1 qualifier runs a 7:37 at 187 miles an hour, and he used a driving job to put away Bob Glidden. Watch this. By some 0.04 of a second, Warren Johnson was off the starting line ahead of Bob Glidden. Remember, each lane of this quarter-mile racetrack is independently timed, and the clocks do not start until the car leaves those beams at the starting line. Thus, Warren Johnson had the advantage and the win, even though Glidden had a quicker elapsed time. In the final, Larry Morgan will race Warren Johnson, and Morgan gets to pick the lane. We'll be coming right back to the Texas Motorplex.
Anytime you go to an NHRA national event, take along a little cheapo AM radio so that when you're in the pits in the deepest, darkest regions, you can still hear guys like Mike Lewis, the NHRA PA announcers, because it's all fed out on the AM band. And I tell you, they're about as good as you'll find at any sporting event. Mike's been doing it for about 12 years. Let's see if we can get a word with him.
They've got a whole fleet of these vintage cars.
Got a sec?
Oh, sure, Steve.
How do you guys stay so knowledgeable on so many cars all over this country?
Well, we like to sound smart. We get a lot of help, though, from the NHRA data bank, and it shows us on the computer screen the 2 racers who are on the starting line, their hometowns, names of their race cars or owners of the race cars, major events. Here we get into all the dial-ins and reaction times, 60-foot times, and who wins.
Now, wait a minute. When I was doing this years ago, we had almost the same stuff, only Pretty Girl showed it to us on 3x5 cards.
It was fun in those days, too. What we really rely on, Steve, is National Dragster to give us the hard facts. We open it up, and right here we find all the latest Winston point standings. Back in the page, we've got divisional point standings. We've got pages full of national record information, contacts on all of the divisional tracks across the country. And then, of course, color coverage, photographs of major events around the country. This is what we really use for facts and figures.
Well, nothing's changed in that department. So did I. I'll let you get back to work.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay. And you know, you can be as smart as Mike Lewis about this sport of drag racing. Just become an NHRA member. You'll get National Dragster in your mailbox every week. And if you call right now, you'll get a free copy of the multi-award-winning home video, Decade of Thrills. Become part of the world's largest motorsports sanctioning body.
On the starting line, the first pair of our semi-finalists for Funny Car Eliminator. Here's the guy leading the series at the moment, Bruce Larson. His Oldsmobile-bodied car has got the choice of lanes over the Ford Probe of Mark Oswald. Oswald pulls ahead and wins in the the quickest side-by-side funny car race of all time. 5.23 seconds. His speed, 281 miles an hour. Larson had a 5:24 at 2:74. There was 0.05 of a second difference in reaction to the green light. Mark Oswald coming out on top in that battle, and also in the war of the quarter mile. As they neared the finish line, Oswald was ahead by more than a car length. Steve?
Well, the fans were treated to a classic side-by-side funny car race, Mark. Your 5:23 to Bruce's 5:24. That's good stuff.
There's some serious racing out here. You know, you got to give those guys credit. They've been there all year long, but this Ford's really running good today.
Well, it's been running good for 2 races. Don't you wish they were the first 2 races of the season instead of towards the end?
Well, we came out strong, and then we got to playing with a few things and fell back, and that's what we needed to get us back in gear, and you're going to see this Ford win this race.
Ooh, I have never heard him talk like that, ever.
Steve, that's a gutsy call considering the level of competition, regardless of who he should race in the finals. Be it Don Prudhomme, who's in the near lane, or the man with the lane choice, Kenny Bernstein. It's going to be tough for Mark Oswald to come home the champion of the Chief Nationals. The staging procedures completed. And Bernstein goes up in smoke. Prudhomme across the finish line with a 5.32 second elapsed time, 271 miles an hour. His time, while it's good, not good enough to get lane choice. That resides in the camp of Mark Oswald in the finals for Funny Car Eliminator. Top Fuel coming up next.
At Fletcher's Furniture, you'll be pleased with the savings on your home furnishings because you're treated.
The Winston Championship for Top Fuel Eliminator. Joe Amato in the near lane challenges Gary Ormsby. Earlier, Steve had a chance to talk to both drivers about their game plans for this race.
But this was a ball game. I would say that you are on offense right now.
Yeah, I think the ball's in our court. We've got lane choice this time, and hopefully that'll be enough to get us through it. He ran awful good last time with that pedal in the car. We saw that he pedaled the car, so that 07 was a little bit off probably what he would have ran if he hadn't had to do that.
What do you think, Joe?
Well, what comes after hardball? It's tough right now. He's running good. His car's running good. He's got a car that's a little better than this car because the motor's back further, and this track's a little slippery, and that gives him a little advantage.
You feel you're on defense now?
Definitely we're on defense. We're struggling. He's the favorite.
While Amato may be on defense, he is the reigning champion of the series, and it is Ormsby who's trying to take that title away from him. Both cars rolling forward, setting the stage. Tremendous racing, and Ormsby by a half a car length wins the race. 4.98 seconds at 289 miles an hour. The losing time for Amato, extremely close, 5:01 at 291. Nobody got an advantage off the starting line. It was an equal start for both drivers. By the time they had reached the midpoint or the 8th mile, a slight lead for Ormsby. Then, as they neared the finish line, you can see Ormsby continued to hold on to the lead and took the victory.
Gary, got to call that a touchdown.
Thank you, Steve. Well, that was a tough one. I saw him right there at the end, so I knew it was a close one.
You ran another 4.98.
Good. I felt pretty good, and we had her cut back just a little bit, tried not to smoke tires.
Look at the relief on that man's face.
Steve, he's got to feel that the weight of the World Championship has just been lifted off his shoulders because the victory over Amato automatically ensures 200 more points going to Gary Ormsby. What a break for this man. Number 4 coming into this race in the point standing. Darrell Gwen gets a single here in the semifinals as Mike Brotherton did not answer the call to lanes. Thus, Darrell Gwen has only to challenge the clock. Trying for the lane choice. Gwen runs 5.03 seconds. The lane choice will go to Ormsby in the finals of the Chief Auto Parts Nationals. And yet again, Gary Ormsby is confronted with a challenge from one of the cars, still in contention for the points lead, Darrell Gwen. Final round racing coming up next. Automobiles in the final of Pro Stock Eliminator at the Chief Nationals. Warren Johnson against Larry Morgan, and Morgan choosing the lane on the far side of the racetrack. In the Top Fuel pits, Steve has the story on Mike Brotherton.
Well, one of the most exciting top fuel weekends Michael Brotherton has spent has come to a sudden end. Darrell Gwen has taken the single. What happened, Mike?
On the last run, we came back and serviced the motor. It was all together and just about to set the supercharger on it. We were tightening the valley studs, and one of the studs pulled out of the cylinder heads. It's a common problem. It just, of anything to happen, that would be the worst, because you got to take the head back off, drill it out, put a helicoil in it, and put it back on. And we got it all the way back oiled and put together. All we were going to do is screw spark plugs in it and get up there. We were just about 15 minutes late.
Sorry to see you out.
I'm sorry to be out, Steve.
What a shame for Mike Brotherton, but what a weekend, capped with, of course, that 294.88 mile-an-hour run. Now, the final race in Pro Stock Eliminator. Larry Morgan in the far lane. Near lane, Warren Johnson. A tremendous driving job by Warren Johnson. He used his reaction time to beat the quickest time of elimination. Larry Morgan ran 7.29 seconds, but it was all wasted because on the starting line, as you can see in replay, Warren Johnson got nearly 0.05 of a second advantage at the start. His time of a 7:31 was more than enough to beat Larry Morgan for the title of the Chief Auto Parts Nationals. As they neared the finish line, the advantage that Johnson had gained at the start paid off. By the slimmest of margins, he's the victor and the champion.
Everybody knows Warren Johnson is a brilliant engineer, engine builder, innovator. Today, you were a brilliant driver. Your 31 beat his 29.
Perfect. I can't have a better run than that, really. I mean, the low ET that we got for qualifying, that helps. But come on here, Larry. I mean, 2 Oldsmobiles, I mean, you can't do any better than that.
Great job, Larry.
Where are you at? I'll tell you that.
Yeah, but those kids, you know, you got plenty of time.
We'll let you guys discuss it. Congratulations.
Thank you. Johnson.
The Pro Stock standings in the Winston Points Chase, still headed by Bob Glidden by a whopping margin over Bruce Allen. Morgan is in 3rd, Johnson 4th, and Darrell Alderman's Dodge in the number 5 spot. The burnouts are completed. In the near lane, it is the Ford Probe of Mark Oswald. And one thing to note here, with the lane choice, Oswald has selected the lane nearest the camera. This goes counter to every other quick car in eliminations today. Don Prudhomme in the far lane. His crew making a final check. Mike Clover, the crew chief, directing him into the proper spot on the starting line. The Pontiac-bodied car comes to a halt in the pre-stage feed. Both drivers now getting themselves ready inside the car. They roll forward, get set. And the gamble failed for Oswald. Up in smoke. Prudhomme across the finish line. The winner of 5:26 at 2:69. A little late hitting his parachute, but no problems for Prudhomme, slowing after his championship run. As we look again, you see Oswald in the near lane, making that lane switch just as the 2 cars came to the starting line. Oswald lost traction within the first 100 feet. Prudhomme, meantime, streaked down the quarter mile to take home the Chief Auto Parts Nationals Funny Car Crown. This win now moves him into 2nd place behind Bruce Larson, just a few points ahead of Kenny Bernstein.
Well, David, a very lazy parachute on the chief champ in funny car down the Snake Prudhomme, 5:26. You're down there, everything's great.
Yeah, it was great. It wasn't the way we'd like to do it, you know, with setting low ET and everything, but gee, Ed McCullough did a great job of that 13. I can't, you know, thank enough about that, and we're just happy, you know, with Skoll and Pontiac and Performance Corner people that support us. I appreciate it.
Were you surprised when Oswald changed his mind on the lanes?
I really was, you know. Usually when someone does that, it's a problem, and we had everything in our favor when they do that, you know. In other words, psychologically, I thought we had him.
Takes a little of the load off of you.
Well, it sure does, you know, and I think this might move us into 2nd place for the World Championship, which is kind of nice, too.
Big money difference between 2nd and 3rd.
Well, it sure is, but, you know, we got 2 more big races to go, and I'm just real happy. The crew did a great job.
We're happy for all of you. Terrific.
Thank you very much.
Try to get that shootout a little early, will you?
Yeah, I don't care about that.
Makes me nervous.
Get through the lights, huh?
Steve Don is exactly right. Getting to the finish line first is what counts, and the big win here moves him ahead of Bernstein. There's the standings. Larson first, Prudhomme second, Bernstein in third, Mark Oswald fourth, and Ed McCulloch, the number 5 car in the series points chase. Don's wife, Lynn Prudhomme, offering her congratulations as only the Top Fuel final remains. One race remains on the Texas Motorplex quarter mile, and it is the title for Top Fuel Eliminator at stake. Darrell Gwen in the near lane. Gary Ormsby in the far lane. Ormsby the leader, Gwen fourth in point standings. Gwen had run consistent 4 second times in the first and second round. Then on that single in the semifinals, he slowed to a 5:03. That gave Ormsby, who had a 4 second time in his semifinal win over Amato, the choice of lanes. And he has not switched. He stayed over in the far lane of the racetrack. Both drivers collecting their thoughts, beginning to concentrate on just what it's going to take to leave the starting line. And Gary Ormsby wins the quickest side-by-side race ever. Darrell Gwen with problems, some flame coming out of the headers. He ran 4:94. Gary Ormsby ran 4:97. The advantage at the starting line gained by Ormsby is what won this race. Look at the header flame standoff of Ormsby's car. First, by nearly 0.08 of a second, Ormsby was out on Gwen. Darrell continued down the racetrack trying to claw his way back into the lead, but it was not to be, as Ormsby had a great 4:97 to hold off Darrell Gwen. Gwen's speed of only 279 miles an hour indicated that he had problems, and there you see them manifesting themselves in that ball of flame. Steve?
You know, David, there's absolutely nothing left for the man behind that multicolored helmet to prove. He has set both ends of the national record. He qualified number 1 and won the final round on driving ability with a whole shot.
Oh, super, Steve. What was the time?
Your 97 beat his 94.
Oh, super. I just wanted to win. We need those points, you know. You said there's nothing left. There's one more thing left, and that's the world championship, and that's what we're going for.
You know, he appeared to be right with you, and the blower exploded on his car.
I never saw him, but, I mean, this car, I can't see him unless they're in front of me, and that's a good... If I can't see him, it's a good sign.
A happy champion, Gary Ormsby. A little of the pressure is off. The man has now won, what, 5 national events this season?
Steve, you're exactly right on your math. 5 national titles, and this one, the biggest of them all for Gary Ormsby. It extended his lead over Joe Amato. Lahaye remains in third. Darrell Gwen a bit closer in fourth, and Eddie Hill is number 5. As the celebration begins, for Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from the Texas Motorplex. The 1989 NHRA Chief Auto Parts Nationals has been brought to you by Fram Bendix Autolite, all quality products of Allied Automotive, and by Firestone. Watch us, we're on the move. And by Quaker State Motor Oil. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will. Coverage of the NHRA Chief Nationals has been a presentation of Diamond P Sports.